Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to share about the parable of the Good Samaritan. Many of you may have heard of this parable already, but let me try to share a few reflections with you all. In the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 to 37, Jesus Christ shares the parable of the Good Samaritan. In that parable, he talks about a man who's traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. And on the way, he has an encounter with the robbers who rob him, strip him, beat him, and leave him half dead by the side of the road. Soon a priest comes along who looks at the wounded man and avoids him by walking on the other side of the road. He's followed by a Levite, a person who has religious responsibilities, who does the same thing. He looks at the wounded man and walks on the other side of the road. After some time, a Samaritan comes along. A Samaritan belongs to a community which is looked down upon by the others. When this Samaritan sees the wounded man, he is filled with compassion. He rushes to him and he takes care of him. He binds his wounds and then takes him on his own donkey to the nearest inn, where he continues to take care of him. The next day, when he has to leave, he gives some money to the innkeeper and asks him to take care of him. And he also adds that if there are any additional expenses, he will pay them when he comes back. So Jesus closes this parable by asking, who is the real neighbor from these people? And that's a reflection for us all. Who do we represent as a neighbor? Are we like the robbers who prioritize the things that others have? Are we like the priest who prioritizes religion and religious purity? Are we like the Levite who prioritizes personal safety? Or are we like the Samaritan who prioritizes the other person and is filled with compassion to help the other person, even if that person is a stranger? The second reflection is the importance of compassion and kindness. We just have to look around and we will see so many instances of people acting without kindness and compassion towards fellow human beings. In this parable, we see that the Samaritan is good because he is filled with compassion and kindness towards the wounded man. How can we be compassionate and kind to our fellow human beings in the present days? The third reflection is the importance of action. Both the priest and the Levite, they did not take any action, even though they saw that it was a wounded man who was lying by the side of the road. Probably the only action they took was not taking the action. But on the other hand, the Samaritan was able to take many actions. First, he rushed to him. Then he took care of him. He bound his wounds. He took him in his own donkey to the nearest inn, admitted him into the inn, met the financial expenses, and was also committed to meeting any other additional financial expenses. So we see that the Samaritan was able to engage in different levels of action. From the most simplest of rushing to the wounded man to the most complex of meeting financial expenses. Now, what action are we taking in order to help our neighbors? Are we still in an inaction mode, or are we in an action mode? If we are in an action mode, what levels of actions are we able to engage in? The next reflection is the need for empathy. Are we able to put ourselves in the other person's shoes? What would have happened to the priest and Levite if they were lying by the side of the road as the wounded man? Would their perspectives have changed? We don't know. But we do know that the Good Samaritan was empathetic. He was able to see through the various needs this wounded man will have and was able to meet all those needs. Are we ready to empathize with our neighbor, whoever it can be, and go the extra mile to help them? The last reflection is the need to go beyond the social norms and expectations. In order to be a good neighbor, we have to break the social norms. Here we see that the priest was complying with the social norm of being religiously pure. And we see that the Levite was complying with the social norm of prioritizing personal safety compared to helping another person. But on the other hand, we see that the Good Samaritan was going beyond the social norm, even though the Samaritan belonged to a community which was not seen favorably. He breaks those social norms in order to help a person in need. Are we ready to go the extra mile, to break social norms in order to help our neighbor? So the parable of the Good Samaritan helps us to reflect on many important aspects of how we can be a good neighbor. The first one being, what kind of a neighbor are we? Are we like the robber, the priest, the Levite, or the Good Samaritan? Do we have compassion and kindness for our neighbors? Do we take action when we see somebody in need? Are we able to empathize with our fellow neighbors? And finally, are we able to overcome the social norms and not let the social norms dictate our intentions of being a good neighbor? Thank you so much for watching this video.